Hi, ladies and gentlemen, Murino Ravenberg here. In this short video, I'll be discussing in essence what business life in Suriname looks like. The idea came to mind. I'm in my backyard right now. That's why I'm sitting in a hammock, for those of you that were wondering. In any case, it makes for a nice backdrop. It's better than recording indoors at the moment. In any case, yeah. In essence or in short, I'm going to discuss what business life in Suriname looks like. I've already covered videos on what life as a whole in Suriname is like, and if you've watched my material or my other videos on Suriname, it is obvious that Suriname is worth less than nothing. Again, it's obvious that Suriname is worth less than nothing. But those of you that want to, despite the fact that I've also published papers, or one paper at least, on other miscellaneous general information on Suriname. Those of you might wonder, there are those of you that might wonder what business life in Suriname looks like. So that's what I'm going to discuss really short. Suriname has one water company, one power company. The water company is called SWM. That's Dutch. It's a Dutch abbreviation for Surinamese Water Company. In Dutch, Surinaamse Waterleidingmaatschappij. Only has one power company called EBS. That's also a Dutch abbreviation for Power Company Suriname. In Dutch, Energiebedrijven Suriname. Literally translates to Power Company Suriname. For the rest, Suriname has other companies, 2 to 3 or more security companies that deal with, that offer electronic security services or manpower related security services, such as renting out the security guard to those that are interested, and it just goes on. Things that you'll definitely not be able to do in Suriname is make any digital payments. So keep in mind, no PayPal, no TransferWise, nothing of a digital sort, okay? The majority of the country still deals with cash transactions, so transactions in cash. If you go to a store, the average store, you'll have to pay in cash. If you take a cab, you'll have to pay in cash. Over 90% of the population, roughly estimated, doesn't even know what a card is, a credit card or a debit card. And the one or two that do think are ignorant enough to the point where they think that it's actually for wealthy people, that it's for the wealthy, that only ridiculously rich people own credit cards or debit cards, but they're not keen on the functionality of it. So that's what you can expect, and that's also the case with banks. The furthest, if you need to send or receive money from abroad, the furthest that you'll get is either a bank wire via any local bank, or a bank wire via any local bank, or Western Union or MoneyGram. These two are also present in Suriname. There are Western Union offices and MoneyGram offices for general money wiring services and needs. And there are also more than a couple of import companies in Suriname. That wasn't the case years ago. Maybe, I don't know, I think 10 years ago, up to 10 years ago, that was not the case. You had to make do with buying what you could find here, what was in supply here. But since people have noticed, and thereby the demand has become a lot larger, that generally speaking, imported goods or ordering goods from abroad, from places like the US, for example, they are a lot more, they're a lot cheaper, and the quality is significantly better. Then the demand has skyrocketed, and therefore also the amount of importing companies you have here. So it is possible to import goods and services from abroad up to a certain point or up to a certain extent. For the rest, you can expect the basic businesses, but don't expect, in essence or in short, do not expect anything extraordinary. Trying to find a business here that offers quality service is literally like trying to find a needle in a haystack. The majority of businesses here and business owners are only concerned with making as much money as possible and spending as little as possible. Of course, this is business 101. I, as an entrepreneur, also have had that mindset, but I also have that mindset, but they just push the envelope to a ridiculously horrifying and disgusting extent. I, for one, would never sacrifice the quality of my work just to make money. But an example that I can give you is that there are businesses here that still make use of the DOS operating system, and they still make use of computers that are not flat screen. We're talking about computers that I think predate Windows XP. That's just an example to give you, so you can imagine what kind of a nightmare it is. Aside from that, generally speaking, working conditions and circumstances are horrendously bad here as an employee. Before I became an entrepreneur, I also worked mundane jobs, if you will. The core of my experience, or the majority of my experience, lies in the security field. That's the line of work that I was in, indoor as well as outdoor. 55%, by the way, was indoor, working as a base station operator. But the point is that it's always the same thing, Working circumstances are bad. You work for minimum wage. Working conditions are bad. You name it. For example, I work for a company. The last company that I officially worked for had some kind of ridiculous policy where you basically couldn't even take a sick leave. It was automatically seen as being absent for a day. It doesn't matter, even if you came with a doctor's note or anything. The company just said, sorry, but that's not our problem. So basically, my reaction was, oh, so I'm not allowed to get sick. Seriously. Not that I get sick often, barely. This was once in a blue moon. But in essence, what you're telling me is that I'm not allowed to get sick or to become sick. Those are just other examples that I can give. For the rest, honestly, I have nothing else to say. I mean, for the rest, these business owners or the people that have the people that are stockholders, majority stockholders, they try to pass themselves off as if they're Bill Gates themselves or anything. It's just a stereotypical worthless wannabe attitude that I'm not gonna get into, because the more I think about it, the more it sickens me to my stomach. But they try to pass themselves off as if they're world class when they're nothing, to be honest. The longest running companies here, and also the so-called most prominent companies, quote unquote prominent companies, are companies that were founded by, or family oriented and family run companies that were founded by, for example, the great grandparents or grandparents of the current people that run the company. And also a good deal of people in Suriname that are business owners. Specifically, the primordial ones, are the ones that started their businesses first, are Lebanese. You can compare the Lebanese in Suriname to the Jews in the US. They hold a significant amount of power in Suriname's business environment. And like I've stated in another video called The Real Suriname, the majority of these businesses are corrupt to the core. Its own business owners, or the people that run the businesses, their businesses, barely even know what a computer is or how to work with a computer. They're just worthless beyond any kind of tangible measure, even intangible. They're just worthless all the way. And yeah, for the rest, you can imagine, okay, there are only 2 internet companies in Suriname that offer broadband services, and one is reliant upon the first one. The primary and very first internet company in Suriname is called Telesur. That's spelled Telesur. It's an abbreviation of telecommunications company in Suriname, and they're the only ones that really offer broadband plans to residential customers. And if I tell you that depending on where you live, of course, internet has to be available or viable in your location. If you live in the capital, of course, or even briefly outside the capital. But bottom line is that if you want an internet connection, it's going to take months, okay, even years. That's how horrible the service is, and that's how bad the service is. There is an alternate company called Parbonet. It's an abbreviation of Paramaribo and Internet. But even that company buys internet rights from Telesur itself. For the rest, there are little to no other real companies in Suriname that offer internet. There is also Digicel, but Digicel is spelled Digicel. But Digicel pretty much only offers broadband services to corporate clients, so to business owners like me. I have a Digicel connection at this moment that I'm recording this video, but I intend on terminating it because it's way too expensive, and I'm not nearly getting what I'm due. In short, I pay $378 for an internet connection of 10 MB download and 3 MB upload. And you can imagine, on a global level, friends of mine worldwide have told me how offensive it is. I mean, they told me, nah, that's offensive, even if you take the fact that Suriname is worth less than nothing into consideration or into account. It's supposed to cost, by local standards, $100 at the most, and yet I almost pay 4 times as much. So yeah, I've only had that connection for half a year. This is all nothing but an example, okay? This is an example to demonstrate, exactly how bad just how bad the business scene in Suriname is. But of course, Suriname as a whole is worth less than nothing. So yeah, shouldn't surprise you. So yeah, that is it in relation to these companies. And what I was gonna say is that even Parbonet takes its internet rights. I've already said that, from Telesur. For the rest, there are no other internet companies. So even if you want internet, Digicel primarily, for example, deals with mobile connections. They don't deal with broadband connections for people, the average person, for residential customers. I was only able to get a connection because I'm a business owner, like I said. It's a corporate connection. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the rest. So you can imagine how deplorable the living standard here is. Competition is little to nothing. Business owners are revolting in terms of attitude and manners towards not only people that work for them, but also towards their clientele or their client base. Like I said, they fraud and corruption and any kind of embezzlement themed crime that you can imagine gets committed in the majority of companies in Suriname. You have people in power that are ridiculously illiterate, similar to the government, people that can barely speak the official language properly, and yet these people, for example, have seats like vice minister or the minister of a certain ministry, or they have they're the department head within a company. Just plain and simply, when it comes to private companies, private contractors and private companies, it's simply that they use these people as puppets. These people, they don't care about the fact that these people are illiterate or capable of doing their jobs, because they themselves as the owners can barely do their jobs. It's the people at the bottom that do the dirty work for them, and they have to take the brunt of it. They'll try to place blame if something goes wrong in the shoes of an employee, you name it. I've seen it all, and I've been through my fair share of everything that I've mentioned. It's just offensive to any person with self-worth, okay? How worthless Suriname as a whole is. But in any case, that's the business scene. So you can imagine, if you're in a location where there is no electricity, where there's no water, so indoor plumbing, and where there's no internet, let's just say 20 kilometers, 30 kilometers outside the city, if you manage to hack down a certain part of the jungle or a certain densely vegetated area, and you start building a house there, and construction ensues, etc., etc., you can imagine what kind of a challenge it is to have power and water, so electricity and indoor plumbing arranged, to have internet arranged, an internet connection. It just keeps going on, the worthlessness. I mean, it can literally take a year or longer, and that is only regarding that. Don't even get me started on a judicial process in Suriname. Filing a lawsuit against anyone is a waste of time, because it will take years. Even if it's a simple civil suit, it will take, I think, at least 2 years, or at the very least a year, before it even reaches the desk of a judge. And that says enough. So it doesn't matter, even if you get robbed here, or if you're the victim of some kind of crime like robbery or assault, it's barely, you don't even have to bother filing a police report, because 95% chance that they're not going to catch anyone. I mean, the police themselves here are hopelessly corrupt to the point where they have criminals as friends, and where some ex-criminals are friends with or actual police officers. They managed to get into the police corps by a friend that scratches their back in return for some other service. Just corruption. It just stinks of corruption all the way. And yeah, like I said, there's nothing else that I can mention really. Okay, service is horrendously deplorable. I mean, that's why everything takes so long. I mean, there is no customer service here whatsoever. No customer service here whatsoever. If you, for example, like in the example I just highlighted, if you're building a house and you want indoor plumbing and power where there is no power, then you'll either have to know someone at these companies, for example, the local power company or the water company, which are also completely corrupt. They're all fucking corrupt. I'm sorry. I couldn't withhold myself from saying fucking. I'm sorry for the swearing, but I just couldn't withhold myself. So yeah, please ignore that. Ignore the swearing. Okay, the brief moment of swearing. You either need to know someone at these companies, or you either need to know someone at these companies, or you need to bribe the bejesus out of them. I mean, you really need to bribe them like no other. You need to pay maybe 5 to 10 times as much as the average person is willing to, and then you're pretty much in. It's not going to be a problem. I mean, that year will turn into a month. Not kidding. Let's just say, for example, to have indoor plumbing arranged at your house, if it would cost $1,000, which is already ridiculously high, and you're willing to pay $7,000, then instead of it taking a year, it will literally take only a month or 2 months. That's how bad things are. And yeah, it just keeps going on and on and on and on and on. It just keeps going on. I have no words for it, but in any case, now you know what to expect business scene-wise in Suriname. Long story short, most businesses, service is horrible. I mean, it's a real wonder. Not all of them are, but the absolute majority, so 9 out of the 10 are hopelessly worthless, just in the way that I described. The 1 out of 10 will actually offer you a decent to good service or proper service. But for the rest, don't expect anything. That's why everything takes so long and everything is ridiculously overpriced. Okay, like I stated in my first video, what life in Suriname is like. The average person makes $250 to $300 at most here, even $200 for minimum wage. When you work in the city, if you work outside the city, for example, let's just say you work at a gold mine or something, you work as a contractor for a company that mines precious metals or valuables. Not that there are too many of those in Suriname, but they are present nevertheless, and they're foreign companies, most of them Canadian, I think, or either Canadian or American. You can make what, $400 at the most, but that means that you'll have to stay outside the city, and if you have a family, you won't see your family 3 weeks out of the month. You only get a week off on average. I've also worked outside the city, so I know what the average schedule looks like. So yeah, that's how much the average person makes, and yet prices are of a European nature. I just had 2 windows of my house replaced. Two simple windows. They were awning windows, and I needed to replace them with mirrored glass, and that cost me 200 American dollars. That's already a person's salary here, just for replacing 2 windows. So basically $100 or $100 a window. And it just goes on. Okay, it just goes on. Things are ridiculously expensive depending on what it is. Everyday goods and services, not so much. Things like toilet paper, food, and stuff like that. That will cost you maybe $50 to $60 per person on a monthly basis. But let's just say, as in the example that I gave, if you want a simple thing done, something simple done, something of a constructional nature, or something relating to that extent, anything that you can think of, something that's not too mundane. It's still mundane, but not too down to earth, as in everyday goods or services. It's gonna be expensive. I have a backup internet connection from Parbonet, and you wanna know how much I pay for that connection? $40 a month, 40 American dollars, keep in mind. And that speed is 3 MB download speed and 1 MB upload speed. That's what I'm referring to. It's obviously way too expensive. Even if you take Suriname's worthlessness into account, it's way, way, way too expensive. For the rest, it's nothing but negativity, okay? Literally trying to find something positive is like trying to find a needle in a haystack, in multiple haystacks even. One other thing that I'm going to mention, for example, is that companies here, I also noticed, companies here, a lot of them have Facebook pages, of course, or they have an online presence, not a website. Facebook is the best that they can do. Very few companies here have websites. It is a growing trend, of course, because they're trying to catch up with countries abroad, but they're hopelessly behind. Of course, the entire country is behind what's supposed to be a country. Suriname's not a country, but yeah, what's supposed to be a country, a country. One or two of them have websites, but even then, their websites are not functioning properly or just plain ugly and user unfriendly. And yeah, what they do is that most of Facebook is quick and easy, so they just make a Facebook page, and the majority of them, they remove negative reviews, which is an attack on free speech. Of course, it's an attack on free speech, an outright attack on free speech. It's an outright attack on free speech. I noticed this too because I left negative reviews on a good deal of companies by coincidence. Let's just say I happened to stumble across their Facebook pages and I just spoke my mind. If a company is good at offering what it does, I'm going to give them props. But if not, then I'm openly going to say no. The company is worthless and this is why they're worthless. And I'm not the only one. For example, with the local power company and water company and so on, these companies have way too many negative reviews. They have way too many negative reviews, so it's not possible for the administrator, for the company to delete all these negative reviews. But other companies on which people don't really bother to give any review of any kind, of any sort, these companies, I noticed that they make a habit of it, which is almost close to fraudulent because it's restricting free speech. They remove negative reviews because they don't want people to see the truth. This isn't a matter of putting out dirty laundry or anything. This is literally obscuring the truth. So they're satisfied and content with positive reviews, but they openly remove any negative review whatsoever because they don't want people to see the truth. They don't want people to see how worthless they really are. So they automatically host cleanups, if you will, on a regular or frequent basis. And something not business oriented is nightlife in Suriname. Nightlife in Suriname is also pretty much non-existent, okay? There is one specific region in Paramaribo's capital, in Suriname's capital, Paramaribo, called a region where a hotel called Torarica is. That place is seen as the nightlife center of Suriname, but it also doesn't amount to anything really, or it doesn't mean anything, because the majority of bars or nightclubs where you go to are also dirty and they're overpriced, of course. Their equipment does not work properly half of the time. It just goes on, and it's not like you're going to meet interesting people or anything like that. No, rarely will you come across normal people, if you will. But again, that's the norm in Suriname. I already said in my first video that what life in Suriname is like, that Suriname is filled for the most part with parasites, not people. Vermin live in Suriname and not people. Of course, not everyone is like that, but the absolute majority is like that. So you can expect to meet these quote-unquote people also on a dating scene or in a nightclub. Not that there is a dating scene in Suriname. Suriname has one or two wannabe dating sites, but these sites don't amount to anything because Surinamese people are either way too shy or they simply don't know how to conduct themselves to the point where you can actually meet someone for either a hookup sexually or romantically. No, that's non-existent here. The people here are ridiculously primitive. Life is literally just finding a good husband or a good wife and staying with that person for the rest of his or her life. Similar to the way animals simply pair up with each other in the jungle to produce offspring and continue the cycle of existence, the cycle of life. That's what Suriname is like. That's on a non-business note. So that's what the nightlife is like. There is no nightlife here. Again, I I know I'm going to repeat myself, but I'd simply like to, for the sake of clarity, I'd like to remind people of this. The only real thing in Suriname that you'll find that is memorable is nature, because Suriname borders so close to the Amazonian rainforest. The only real thing that you'll find here is nature, worth something. The one or two naturistic resorts make it worth your time, but again, you'd also get bored with these places or become bored with these places. So I think a week or two at most is more than enough if someone were to come on vacation here. But truth be told, again, there are plenty of other countries like Jamaica, the Bahamas, you name it, that have the exact same things that Suriname have, and 1,000 times better. So if you want to enjoy nature, you want to enjoy beautiful palm trees, etc., go to one of these countries. But why come to Suriname? It's honestly not necessary. That's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. Bye.